While eating, the woman suddenly noticed something strange. The pregnant woman across from her only ate a jelly bean, but her face showed a slight distortion. Ellie was deeply shocked, but in the next second the woman quickly returned to normal. Ellie was so frightened that she stood up. The sound of the chair falling alarmed the staff. When the staff asked her what happened, Ellie claimed that nothing had happened. That night, Ellie began to reflect on everything that had happened. She realized that everyone in this institution seemed very strange, so Ellie asked her roommate Rosie a question. Ellie asked Rosie which side of the bed her husband slept on. Rosie said she had forgotten. No matter how hard she tried to remember, she still could not recall. Hearing this, Ellie fell silent, because she had forgotten too. One person forgetting could be a coincidence, but two people forgetting was extremely strange. The next day, Ellie went for a walk in the park. While resting on a bench, Ellie casually picked up a stick. Then she drew the outline of the Eiffel Tower on the ground. At that moment, Ellie suddenly heard a pleasant melody. Soon after, Rosie and her companion arrived. From them, Ellie learned that this sound signaled someone was about to give birth, and that the delivery room was inside the tall building in front of them. Every newcomer who arrived here would be arranged to tour the various facilities inside the center. Hearing Rosie's words, Ellie felt puzzled. She had no memory of this. At Rosie's request, the center's director Victor led Ellie to the delivery room. When she saw that there was only one birthing bed in the room, Ellie became doubtful again. One bed could only serve one pregnant woman. What would happen if two women gave birth at the same time? In response to Ellie's question, Victor simply said not to worry. Everything had already been planned by the center. After leaving the delivery room, Ellie was taken to the psychological counseling center. Ellie wanted to tell them what she had seen the day before, but before she could speak, the psychiatrist asked her if she had been taking her jelly beans on time. After receiving a positive answer, the psychiatrist smiled. She said that if Ellie ever felt too much pressure, she could focus her mind on an activity, but Ellie couldn't even remember what she liked the most. Seeing this, the doctor smiled again. After leaving the counseling center, Ellie entered another room. There she suddenly noticed the paintings inside. Ellie was astonished. The artist's skill was remarkable. Hearing Ellie's praise, the woman picked up an art book and gave it to her. Ellie accepted the book and began to flip through it. But when she turned to the third page, Ellie's expression instantly grew serious. She then took the book and dragged Rosie to the park. Ellie picked up a stick and asked Rosie to draw the Eiffel Tower on the ground. After much urging from Pilar, Rosie sketched the shape of the tower from memory. But when Ellie saw the drawing on the ground, she was deeply shocked. She dragged Rosie to the spot where she had rested earlier that morning. Then she showed Rosie her own drawing of the Eiffel Tower. Rosie said the two drawings were very similar, but Ellie insisted they weren't just similar, they were identical. Then she picked up the art book again, and on the third page was a painting of the Eiffel Tower. The sequence and proportions of all three were exactly the same. Could this really be just a coincidence? This discovery made Ellie uneasy. At that moment, Rosie saw the director of the center. She suggested telling him about their discovery. Maybe he could explain Ellie's doubts, but Ellie flatly refused. She no longer trusted anyone in the institution. At this moment, Ellie had no idea that after returning to the center, the director went straight into the work area. There she removed her protective helmet. This was the core area of the institution, and also the exclusive care zone for newborns. In addition, a huge number of baby embryos were stored here. Just as Ellie had suspected, on the surface it appeared to be a maternity care center, but behind it hid even more terrifying secrets.
This is a strange boarding school. Students here don't need to study or do homework, but they must all be girls under 60 years old, and their only daily task is to line up for facial cleansing and skincare. When it's their turn to wash their faces, they must arrive at the washing basin on time and face the camera, then wash their faces repeatedly until the green indicator light on the wall lights up. Only then is a girl's face washing considered satisfactory. If a girl misses her face washing time, when the red light comes on, she will be taken away by tall and strong security guards and receive unknown punishment. Other students must face the wall with their heads down. They can only watch helplessly as the guards take the girl away. These girls are all orphans. They were adopted by the school when they were young. 60 years later, those girls have all grown up. For years they had to follow the rules inside when looking at study materials. Even if the computer malfunctions, they must wait until the bell rings before leaving. And the female instructor constantly emphasizes to them that the outside world is facing apocalypse, and the air is full of deadly toxins. Therefore, the school has prepared vitamin pills. They need to take one daily to detoxify. And as the girls grow older each year, they move up to a higher floor, until the day they moved to the 16th floor. The female instructor gathered them together, then told them all their courses here were finished, and soon after, wealthy parents would come to adopt them. Unexpectedly, all the girls except Lucy were very happy, especially Annie, because she was the best performing student among peers her age. But the next day, while Annie was cleaning, Lucy suddenly approached Annie. Looking around to make sure no one was there, she quietly told Annie "Don't take the vitamin tonight." Annie was very confused, but before Lucy could explain, another student walked in. Annie was called away. Seeing this, Lucy had to give up. Soon it was time for them to take their vitamins, although Annie was puzzled. After glancing at the camera, she took the vitamin without hesitation, but then she quietly went to the bathroom and spat the unswallowed vitamin into the toilet. Annie regretfully covered her mouth after spitting it out, because she had violated the school's rules. However, unexpectedly, Annie soon discovered something unusual. She had trouble sleeping that night, and wanted to talk to the girl next to her, but the other girl was already sound asleep. Lucy, hearing the sound, suddenly sat up. She told Annie that except for the two of them, the others wouldn't wake up, because what they had taken wasn't vitamins at all, but sugar pills that helped with sleep. Before Lucy could finish speaking, footsteps were heard in the corridor. Both of them lay down alertly, pretending to sleep. Then they saw the female instructor enter with two security guards. Following the instructor's directions, the guards carried away Annie and another girl. They took them to the restroom and left. Then they saw the female instructor leading an elderly couple in. They started selecting girls like shopping for items. The old man immediately took a liking to Annie. The old lady stared at her aging face. Eventually, the old lady chose another girl, and so Annie was carried back to the dormitory. However, what happened next was unexpected.
The woman steps out of the shower, and the moment she looks up, she spots a camera hidden inside the shower head. Convinced someone's been secretly filming her, Anna quickly calls in Mike, her boyfriend's cousin. Mike looks it over carefully, then suddenly bolts out of the room and rushes to check the other bathroom. Sure enough, there's a camera planted in that shower head too. Fuck! Who would have guessed their very first vacation would turn out like this? Clearly, the landlord is behind it. But here's the problem. They don't dare call the police, because the two of them just did something they shouldn't have. If the cops get involved, they'll demand the landlord hand over the footage, and then Mike's wife and his cousin will find out their secret. So they have no choice but to swallow their anger and act like nothing's wrong. Right then, Mike's wife and his cousin come back. The two quickly bury their rage and force out a smile, terrified of giving themselves away. It's day 3 of their trip, and they leave in one more day. To make the last day count, Mike's wife Mary suggests they treat themselves to a big KFC meal. But Anna's still seething inside. She couldn't care less about KFC right now. All she wants is to get out of here, so she mumbles some excuse to brush it off. What neither of them expects is that the landlord shows up at their door that night. Turns out the jets in the tub stopped working while Mary was bathing, so she'd called him over. Once the landlord fixes the tub and is about to leave, Anna stops him, claims the toilet's broken, and quietly leads him into the room. Looking at that shameless face of his, Anna's blood boils. She gets straight to the point and demands to know if he planted the cameras, warning him she'll call the police if he doesn't hand over the footage. To her surprise, the landlord doesn't budge an inch. He flat out insists he had no idea any cameras were there. Seeing him deny everything, Anna pulls out her phone and shines the light right on it. But even with the proof staring him in the face, the landlord keeps swearing it's got nothing to do with him. He even says if she wants to call the cops, he'd be glad to help, and pulls out his own phone. That sends Anna into a panic. Terrified her secret with Mike will come out, she lunges to stop him. As the two of them struggle, her boyfriend John happens to walk by outside. Thinking the landlord is hurting his girlfriend, he charges in without a word and tackles the man, raining punch after punch down on his head. It takes Mike pulling him off to finally make him stop. With things this far gone, Anna has no choice but to admit the cameras. But she pins all the blame on the landlord and breathes not a word about her and Mike. Now the landlord's been beaten badly and they need to call an ambulance to get him to a hospital. As much as they dread their secret getting out, there's nothing else to be done. But then, something no one saw coming. After those few punches, the landlord stops breathing. The sudden turn leaves all 4 of them stunned. They'd only come here for a vacation, and now there's a dead body, and the man died from just a few hits. But if the police ever find out, not one of the 4 walks away clean. That's when Mike makes his pitch. They have to get rid of the body without a trace, and to keep the cops from getting suspicious, they need to stage the scene to look like an accidental death. And there's a hidden reason behind what Mike's saying. With the landlord dead, no one will ever know about the footage. The other 3 nod along, all except Mary. Deep down, she just can't accept becoming an accomplice. After a huge fight with Mike, she storms back to the room. The other 3 slip out under cover of night to deal with the body. They cut through a small grove of trees, reach the edge of a cliff, and shove the landlord right over without a second thought. But of course, that's exactly when things go wrong again. The body doesn't make it to the bottom. Instead, it gets caught on a big rock partway down. Fuck! With no other option, the 2 men heave up a boulder, planning to knock the body loose. The result's obvious. It doesn't work at all. In the end, John has to climb down the cliff face himself. Once he reaches the rock, he gives one hard shove and sends the body falling. Meanwhile, back at the house, Mary notices something strange. She hears running water, like someone's taking a shower, but all 3 of them are outside. She's the only one home. Driven by curiosity, Mary follows the sound up to the 2nd floor. The noise is coming from right here, and the moment she looks closer, she freezes. There on the TV screen is footage of Anna in the shower, and the next second, her own husband Mike appears in the video too. Turns out he's been hiding it from her all along. He and Anna have been sleeping together. Outside, Mike has no idea. They've just finished disposing of the body and are about to head back, when an eerie figure quietly appears behind them. Mike sees his wife Mary getting in the car to leave and hurries after her to get answers. He assumes she's leaving because she won't be an accomplice, never knowing she's already uncovered his secret. Mary drives the car into the woods, but she doesn't get far before it suddenly spins out of control and slams straight into a tree. Furious, Mary pounds the steering wheel, unable to believe her rotten luck. After venting, Mary gets out, planning to walk back to the house. That's when she notices something. A row of nails laid out across the stretch of road she just drove, like someone scattered them there on purpose. The more she thinks about it, the more wrong it feels. Forgetting her anger, she decides to get back in the car and tell Mike. But just as Mary pulls out her phone to text him, the mysterious figure lunges out of nowhere. Soon after, Mike sees the text and races into the woods to find Mary. He spots his car parked on the roadside, the window already smashed. Thinking she did it on purpose to spite him, he gives her a call. A second later, Mary's phone rings somewhere in the trees. Sure enough, she's nearby. Mike rushes in, but when he gets close, he finds Mary already dead in the woods. Just as panic sets in, the masked figure appears out of nowhere and knocks him out cold with a single blow. Meanwhile, John's phone suddenly receives a video, the hidden camera footage, sent from Mike's phone by the mysterious figure. Seeing he's been cheated on, John flies into a rage and storms out to settle the score with Mike, only to be dropped by a hammer blow from the figure lying in wait. Anna hears the commotion and runs out to look, never expecting to find John's body. The instant she spots that masked figure, she takes off running. But by now, a heavy fog has rolled in, and in her desperate escape, she loses her footing and tumbles off the cliff. With all four of them dead, the mysterious figure slowly removes his mask. He moves on to another place, rents a new house, installs a camera in the shower head, cuts a spare key, and quietly waits for his next tenant to arrive. He has no grudge against any of them. He simply wants them dead.
The girl was in class when a crow suddenly crashed into the window. The classmates were all shocked, but the girl remained calm. She slowly looked at the scissors in her pen holder. After class, while her classmates weren't watching, she picked up the scissors and cut off the crow's head. A woman nearby saw this scene and smiled while giving the girl a thumbs up. As if praising her actions, the girl took the crow's head home, planning to turn it into a cute toy. Then a blue ring of light appeared outside the window, immediately catching the girl's attention. She curiously walked out of the house and found her deceased grandmother sitting not far away, with blazing flames burning beside her. The girl clicked her tongue lightly, then walked toward her grandmother in a daze. Luckily, her mother Ellie rushed over in time. After this incident, Ellie realized she had never moved on from the grief of losing her loved ones, and had neglected her daughter because of it. To stop the girl from wandering off again, Ellie asked her son Peter to take her to a party. Although he was reluctant, Peter still agreed. However, on the way, the girl kept making strange clicking sounds with her tongue, which made Peter very irritated. He just wanted to get to the party quickly and get rid of her. When they arrived at the party, Peter casually pointed to a cake nearby, telling her she could eat anything she wanted. Then he left her there alone. But not long after, the girl began to have trouble breathing. She immediately found Peter and told him about her symptoms. Realizing the danger, Peter quickly drove her to the hospital. However, on the way, her condition worsened. She opened the window to get some fresh air. The next second, Peter froze in horror, not daring to look back. He mechanically drove the car home. After returning to his room, Peter lay on his bed, unable to close his eyes all night. The next morning, he heard his mother's cries from outside. Clearly, she had found the girl's body. The couple held a funeral for the girl in grief. After losing 2 family members in a row, Ellie was completely devastated. The atmosphere at home became tense. She vented all her emotions and blamed Peter for the girl's death.
Well, now your sister is dead, but you can't take responsibility for anything. So now I can't accept, and I can't forgive, because nobody admits anything they've done.
What about you, Mom? She didn't want to go to the party. So why was she there?
Although her husband stopped the argument in time, Peter's words still made Ellie deeply hurt. If she hadn't insisted on sending her daughter to the party, this tragedy would never have happened. A few days later, Ellie met her mother's friend Lucy at the supermarket. They had met before at her mother's funeral. Lucy noticed how exhausted Ellie looked and took the initiative to comfort her. Under Lucy's persuasion, Ellie told her everything that had happened recently. After listening, Lucy said she knew a medium from whom she had learned a summoning ritual that allowed her to contact her deceased child. At first, Ellie didn't believe it, but under Lucy's strong insistence, she still followed her to her home to perform the ritual more effectively. Lucy gave Ellie a jelly bean to help her stay calm. However, Lucy had taken out a white jelly bean, yet Ellie noticed brown residue on her hand. She didn't think much of it, and soon began the ritual following Lucy's instructions. They first placed their hands on a cup. Then Lucy began to chant an incantation. The next second, something miraculous happened.
Louis, if you're here.
Then a line of writing appeared on the chalkboard. "Grandma, I miss you." Ellie was completely shocked. Frightened, she interrupted the ritual. But before she left, Lucy handed Ellie all the tools needed for the ritual, and carefully explained the precautions. Driven by her longing for her daughter, Ellie began to waver, so she accepted them. However, she didn't know that from this moment, her whole family had fallen into a terrifying trap. That night, Ellie suddenly woke up and found her bed crawling with ants. Confused, she got up to check, only to see all the ants crawling toward Peter's room. When she stepped forward, the sight before her left Ellie frozen in shock. Peter's face was covered with ants. Ellie screamed in terror. Luckily, Peter woke her up in time. Seeing him sitting safely on his bed, Ellie thought she was hallucinating, but then Peter asked his mother why she was afraid of him.
I never wanted to be your mother.
Fortunately, it had all been a nightmare. To ease the pain of losing her daughter, Ellie decided to perform the summoning ritual with her whole family. The family held hands and stood around the table. As the chant began, Ellie began calling out her daughter's name.
Charlie, are you here?
As the cup began to move, Ellie became excited, but Peter was terrified. Suddenly, Ellie began to scream. No matter how Peter tried to stop her, she wouldn't stop. Her husband hurriedly splashed her with cold water, which finally brought her back to her senses. But Ellie couldn't remember what had just happened. At that moment, she had no idea it was all part of a huge conspiracy, and the one behind it all was her deceased mother. Some people die but never leave. True horror begins the moment. Longing turns into obsession. The little boy discovers in terror that his father is abusing his mother late at night. He wants to cry out to stop it, but at this moment his father seems like a completely different person. Not only does he not stop, he slowly turns his gaze toward John instead. John is so frightened that he immediately turns and runs back to his room. In panic, he hides inside a box, listening to the footsteps on the stairs drawing closer and closer. He can only keep praying that he will not be discovered. But soon his father finds him anyway.
No, Father, no!
John is dragged outside the house. Only then does he realize his father has already dug a deep pit in the yard. John completely breaks down. He asks his father why he is doing this.
Blood calls blood, son.
After that, his father coldly begins to shovel dirt into the pit. At the critical moment, his mother rushes out. Because of this terrifying childhood experience, John grows up and leaves his hometown far behind. However, one day he suddenly learns that his brother Stephen left him a house before he died to give his children a better life. John follows the address written in the letter and brings his children to this remote villa. But just as he takes the key and prepares to open the door, a flock of nightingales suddenly takes flight. This eerie scene seems to foreshadow something ominous, but John does not take it seriously. That night, John prepares to take a bath to relax. But the next second, he is shocked to discover the once clear bathwater has turned into mud filled with wriggling insects. His childhood nightmares instantly flood back. But when John opens his eyes again, he realizes everything just now was only a hallucination. To calm himself, John lies down in icy water. Yet at that moment, a line of bloody words slowly appears on the ceiling. Looking carefully through the surface of the water, he sees it is the very phrase his father used to repeat. Blood must be paid with blood. One bizarre incident after another fills John with intense unease. Since the moment he stepped into this villa, it feels as if something buried deep within his bloodline is being awakened. That night, John repeatedly thinks about everything that happened during the day. Before he can figure it out, sudden knock echoes at the door. John brings the children down to the first floor. Holding a weapon, he quietly asks who is outside. But there is no response at all. Through the reflection on the door, John realizes the person outside seems to be a child. However, when he opens the door, a strange-looking girl walks inside. John recognizes her as a girl from the town.
Susan, wake up.
After waking the girl from her sleepwalking state, everyone asks how she came here, but the girl remembers nothing. With no other choice, they can only send her home. And the next morning, while John is shaving, he suddenly feels something wriggling inside his nose. He pulls hard and drags out a worm that is still squirming. John collapses on the spot, but soon he realizes it is another hallucination. The constant hallucinations plunge John into complete terror. He decides to go to the town to uncover the hidden truth about his brother Stephen's family. However, when he arrives at the town, he finds the residents unusually agitated. It turns out that after the girl returned home last night, she lay in bed and began speaking incoherently. She told her mother that Stephen had returned. As soon as she finished speaking, the girl lost her life. Her mother collapses on the spot. She rushes out of the house screaming that Stephen has returned and insists that Stephen took her daughter away. Even though the sheriff keeps explaining that Stephen died years ago, the woman refuses to listen. She turns and points at John, yelling in fury, saying that his family has cursed the entire town and that the people here have never lived normal lives. The surrounding residents are completely incited. The scene quickly descends into chaos. Seeing this, John immediately takes his children back home. Thinking back on the series of strange events, John realizes he seems to have been drawn into a terrifying conspiracy. After getting off the carriage, he heads straight to the backyard and arrives at his brother Stephen's grave. This time he decides to dig out the truth himself. As John continues digging, a locked coffin is finally revealed. John pries open the coffin at once, only to be shocked to find it completely empty. Fear instantly consumes him. John begins to suspect that his brother Stephen hid a terrible secret. What frightens him even more is that his children may be harmed. Just as John sinks into deep thought, a loud crash of shattering glass suddenly rings out. A group of masked people are hurling stones at the house. They roar, demanding that John's family leave the town immediately. John is completely enraged. He grabs a weapon and rushes outside. When the crowd sees the gun, they instantly fall silent. John tries to reason with them, but before he can speak, he is attacked from behind and slammed to the ground. The masked people immediately surround him. At that moment, a gunshot rings out. Seeing the gun in the girl's hand, the masked people quickly flee the scene. John knows clearly that these people are the town's residents. They wear masks only because they fear retaliation afterward. However, in the chaos, one masked person becomes separated from the others. As he quietly calls out for his companions, he fails to notice a strange figure approaching from the darkness. Since stepping into this villa, this nightmare of bloodlines and curses has become impossible to escape. John does not know that the true horror is only just beginning. Follow me for an even more thrilling next episode. On his first day working at the nursing home, he immediately noticed something strange. The nursing home was full of frail old people, yet strange lewd noises kept coming from their rooms. John curiously peeked through the crack in the door and saw a white-haired old man wearing a mask. John found it very bizarre. How could such weak old men be so energetic? Not only that, all the elders here were acting oddly. They swam and exercised in the pool. They didn't look like people in their 80s at all. While John was organizing his belongings, a scream suddenly came from the pool. An old man had been injured. John quickly rushed over to disperse the crowd. On his first day at work, he ran into something this strange. John felt deeply uneasy, but all he could do was pray. However, that night, the strange events happened again. While John was sleeping, someone suddenly called his name with a miserable cry. John woke up instantly, but he thought it was just a nightmare. Then another scream came from upstairs. John was terrified. Before he could figure out what was going on, he noticed that his door had been opened. John cautiously locked it again, then lay back in bed. Even though the nursing home was creepy, John couldn't quit the job. It turned out that John was a rebellious young man. A few days ago, he had been arrested for graffiti. Although his adoptive father was disappointed in him, he still pulled strings to plead with the judge. In the end, the judge said, as long as John worked as a volunteer at a nursing home for a while, he could avoid going to jail. The next night, a masked person quietly slipped into John's room. She carefully lay down beside him. Soon, John sensed something strange.
Do you like what you saw yesterday?
Fortunately, it was only a nightmare. Just as John relaxed, he suddenly found the door open again. Could the masked person really have come? The thought made John fully awake. He went to the masked person's room to investigate, but everything looked normal there. John thought he was just overthinking. However, just as he was about to leave, another scream echoed from upstairs. John froze in place. He couldn't hold back his curiosity any longer. John went up the stairs. He pried the door open with a wire, but when he pushed the door open, he was horrified by what he saw. Inside the room, there were more than a dozen old people imprisoned. They were restrained in wheelchairs. Their skin was rotting. Drool was dripping from their mouths, and even worse, strange fluid was flowing from their eyes. John was deeply shocked. Then an old man in the corner noticed him. John felt that the man looked familiar, but the next second the old man suddenly began shouting wildly. John was scared out of his wits. Luckily, the doctor arrived in time and restrained the old man. John thought he had made a terrible mistake, and that he would be fired today. But strangely, the director only scolded him a little and didn't pursue the matter. After leaving the office, John went outside to sweep the fallen leaves. Then he noticed at a fourth-floor window, an old man had bitten his finger and was drawing strange symbols on the glass, as if trying to tell John something. John recognized him as the one who attacked him the day before, and this old man looked eerily similar to his late brother. John's brother had mysteriously died during college, but strangely, his adoptive parents didn't let him attend the funeral. Could this old man on the fourth floor be connected to his brother? To find out the truth, John hid a camera in the flower pot in the hallway. That night, he began monitoring everything in the nursing home. Then the old man from the fourth floor appeared on the screen. He seemed to be trying to escape, but soon he noticed the camera. His body was too weak, and he quickly disappeared from view. After some time, John fell asleep. When he woke again, it was midnight. He saw a nurse pushing an old man toward the basement. John felt uneasy. He quickly followed. From inside the basement came the screams of old people. John was about to step forward to check, but was spotted by a guard dog. He ran back to his room at once, but suddenly a woman appeared in front of him. She told John that the nursing home was using the elderly for human experiments. and that her father had lost his life there. After saying that, she turned to leave, but as she opened the door, an old man was standing right outside. Sometime later, John finally woke up. The nurse explained that a patient from the 4th floor had escaped and attacked him. But John, who knew the truth, didn't believe anyone there. While the nurse wasn't looking, he climbed out the window and fled. When he returned to his adoptive parents' home, he found 2 sisters there. John didn't think much of it. He told his adoptive parents everything about the nursing home. After hearing it, they decided to go to the police. But at that moment, the 2 girls entered John's room. They said they had found a secret room in the house. John was puzzled. He followed them to the master bedroom upstairs. Through the wardrobe, they found a hidden chamber. Inside was a statue of a goddess called the Goddess of Youth. On the altar were several photo albums. John slowly opened them, but what he saw inside horrified him. The people in the photos were all residents of the nursing home. Even his adoptive parents were among them. But the photos were taken 30 years ago. How could they not have aged at all? On the last page of every album was the same group photo. Only the young person in the wheelchair kept changing. Then one photo made John freeze, because the one in the wheelchair was his brother Luke. The date on the photo was the same year his brother died. John suddenly realized something. Maybe his brother hadn't died at all. Maybe this was part of a massive conspiracy. The girl was taking a shower in the bathroom. Suddenly a man appeared behind her, but the sound of the water was too loud, so Ellie didn't notice anything unusual. The next second, the lights suddenly went out. Ellie thought it was just an electrical issue, so she opened the door to check, but as soon as she stepped out, the lights mysteriously came back on. Then the sound of running water came eerily from the next bathroom. Ellie walked over to take a look, but found that no one was inside. What on earth was going on? But Ellie didn't think too much about it. She picked up her bag and turned to leave, but she didn't notice that the hair she had dropped in the bathroom was slowly disappearing. That night, Ellie was suddenly awakened by the sound of water. She got up to check and found water stains around the door lock. Ellie opened the door and walked out. By now the hallway was already flooded. But how could there be so much water in the dorm building? Ellie was very confused. Then she felt a sudden wave of dizziness. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself back in the bathroom. Images of a boy being bullied flashed before her eyes. Ellie suddenly opened her eyes. It turned out everything just now was a dream. Then Ellie suddenly noticed the water stains on the door lock. Only now did she realize something was wrong. She told her friend about what happened in the 5th floor bathroom, but her friend didn't believe her at all, because that was originally the boys' bathroom. But a year ago, a boy mysteriously disappeared there. Since then, the school shut down the 5th floor bathroom. After hearing her friend's story, Ellie came up with a bold theory. She searched online for information about the 5th floor bathroom. She finally found the boy from her vision in an old group photo. That boy was the one who went missing a year ago. Thinking of the cruel images from her hallucination, Ellie felt she had touched the truth. She guessed the boy was bullied for some unknown reason, which led to his mysterious disappearance. Thinking of this made Ellie very sad, but Ellie didn't know that this emotion was no longer just her own. The woman suddenly received news of her sister's death. Her only relative had passed away. It was a huge blow to Ellie, but soon Ellie noticed something strange. 2 days ago, her sister had invited her on a trip. How could she have died so suddenly? To find out the true cause of her sister's death, Ellie and her friend John went to her sister's house. But the moment they stepped inside, Ellie saw her supposedly dead sister sitting on the sofa.
You must help them.
Ellie was terrified, but then her sister's voice sounded in her ears. Ellie did not understand who her sister was talking about. Just as she was feeling confused, a man appeared. The man was a relic collector. He had been searching for a statue called Bammy. Rumor had it that anyone who touched this statue would become rich. A few days ago, her sister contacted the man via email. Her sister said the statue was enshrined in the deepest part of a mental hospital, and the reason her sister knew about it was because Ellie used to work there. So the man asked her sister to draw a map of the mental hospital. But before he could get the map, her sister lost her life. After hearing the man's story, Ellie became very angry. There was no way she would ever return to the mental hospital. It turned out that the mental hospital was extremely dangerous. During Ellie's time working there, she once met a man. The man told her the statue was something very evil. It could turn the people around it into evil spirits, and the one who controlled the statue was the director of the hospital. After the director obtained the statue, he became extremely evil. He tortured the patients every day. Unable to bear his cruelty, the patients began to revolt together. But the director sealed all the hospital's doors and set the mental hospital on fire. At that time, the director placed the statue in the deepest part of the hospital. Ellie knew how dangerous the statue was. She would never take the statue out. But after she got home, she received a package her sister had sent before her death. When she opened it, Ellie found a diary inside and a map of the mental hospital. Ellie became very nervous. Just as she was about to tear up the map, the front door was suddenly knocked on.
This woman was patiently helping her son with his schoolwork when suddenly Rebecca wrapped her hands around the boy's neck and began choking him. But only seconds later, she let go. deep down, she knew none of this was Johnny's fault. The person responsible was the nanny who had completely turned her son against her. It had all started just a few days earlier when Rebecca hired a nanny named Millicent. Her job was simple: care for Johnny, a child suffering from a rare congenital allergy disorder. But as the days passed, Johnny grew increasingly attached to her. Before long, he began seeing Millicent as his mother. And Millicent, in turn, started acting as though she truly belonged in the family. She even began an affair with Rebecca's husband. Consumed by rage, Rebecca finally snapped. She grabbed a knife and stormed into the storage room, where she found Millicent together with her husband. Without hesitation, she lunged forward and stabbed her. The searing pain made Millicent scream. She shoved Rebecca away and ran for the backyard as fast as she could, but with blood pouring from her wound. She didn't make it very far before Rebecca caught up with her. Then, at the most critical moment, Johnny stepped into the yard. Desperate, Millicent immediately called out for help. The instant Johnny saw her, a strange smile slowly spread across his face. And just like that, Millicent met a brutal end at Johnny's hands. Even in her final moments, she never understood why the boy who had always treated her like his real mother suddenly turned on her so viciously. As for Rebecca and Jacob, they barely seemed shocked at all. In fact, they looked as though they had been through this many times before. Calmly and without a word, the couple dug a hole in the backyard and efficiently buried Millicent's body. But then came the horrifying revelation. Scattered around the grave were several other bodies, their lifeless faces frozen in expressions of terror. It was clear that Millicent wasn't the first nanny to die on this property. Only now does the truth finally come to light. Johnny's condition had never been a simple medical disorder. Instead, he developed an intense emotional attachment to every nanny hired to care for him. But eventually, something dark inside him would take over. Once that bond grew strong enough, his violent impulses would surface, and he would brutally murder the very person he had become attached to. Desperate to spare their beloved son from the consequences of his condition, Rebecca and Jacob had spent years repeating the same horrifying cycle. They continuously hired new nannies, knowing exactly how it would end, and then worked together to cover up the murders afterward. And now, Rebecca was already searching for the next nanny.
Charlie wasn't calling his mom, but rather his buddy Burger. He then immersed himself in the music, waiting for his good friend to arrive. When he opened the door, Charlie was surprised. Burger actually brought Maya and Lizzie. Charlie immediately closed the door. After taking a deep breath, he reopened the door. The buddies were very curious about Charlie's dad's house. Charlie accidentally bumped into a perpetual motion ball and opened his dad's secret base. The buddies were all extremely curious. Lizzie guessed the password, and they entered the space that resembled an elevator. Charlie saw a red button. Maya pressed it. Instantly, they plummeted rapidly. When the doors opened, none of the buddies were hurt. The secret base instantly activated. The buddies were stunned by the scene before them. Charlie also understood why his dad was always busy working. His dad was saving the world, a guardian. The buddies were all very excited. They began to investigate. Burger got hold of a magic wand that could make screws levitate. Lizzie pressed a button on her backpack and started flying around. Everyone didn't know what to do. Charlie was knocked down to the ground. As Charlie raised his hand, he accidentally aimed his wrist at Maya. Maya fell to the ground. Charlie and Lizzie were very panicked. Maya slowly opened her eyes. Turns out, her clothes protected Maya. Maya wasn't hurt.
The man drew a circle beside the bed with a piece of chalk. According to Irish folklore, if you draw a circle on the ground with chalk, a witch can no longer harm you. After finishing everything, John quickly curled up on the bed. He prayed that he would make it safely through the night. The next day, Jack arrived at the hotel to inspect the results, but he unexpectedly discovered bloodstains on the hotel bar. Jack immediately sensed that something was wrong. He rushed to the honeymoon suite at once. Sure enough, the person he had taken away the day before had somehow returned. To prevent John from being discovered, Jack lied and claimed that he had already searched the honeymoon suite. He insisted that John had probably left the hotel long ago. Kind-hearted Jerry chose to believe him, so he turned around and prepared to leave. At that moment, he had no idea that the man standing before him was responsible for everything. A few days earlier, John had traveled to Ireland to fulfill his parents' final wish. It was here that his parents had spent their honeymoon years ago. Even after so many years, they still cherished those memories. However, when John arrived at the hotel, he discovered that the honeymoon suite where his parents had stayed had been completely sealed off. Filled with curiosity, he asked a hotel employee about it. To his surprise, he was told that a witch was imprisoned inside the suite. Seeing how mysterious the employee acted, John could only shake his head. He did not believe the story at all. But determined to uncover the room's secret, he sneaked into the suite late that night. As a result, he accidentally witnessed Jack's terrible crime. Looking at the corpse before him, John immediately realized that Jack would never let him leave alive. Sure enough, when he tried to escape, he found that Jack had already locked the door. With no other choice, John could only wait for rescue. But then something even stranger happened. An eerie laugh echoed through the room's ventilation ducts. John cautiously moved closer to investigate. To his horror, he saw a terrifying woman crawling through the duct toward him. The witch was real. In that critical moment, John suddenly remembered an old Irish legend. As long as a chalk circle was drawn on the ground, a witch could not harm the person inside it. John immediately put the legend to the test. Thanks to that circle, he barely survived the terrifying night. But if no one found him soon, he knew he would eventually die. Just when John was losing hope, he suddenly heard voices coming from upstairs. He carefully stepped out of the circle, but fearing that the witch might appear again, he did not dare make any noise. There was only one way left to get Jerry's attention. Meanwhile, Jerry was about to drive away after failing to find John. But suddenly, he seemed to realize something and turned back. The moment Jack saw this, he became extremely nervous. Desperate, John kicked through the wall. He grabbed the two broken ends of a rope, then he began shaking them as hard as he could. Jerry instantly sensed that something was wrong. Ignoring Jack's desperate pleas, he opened the elevator leading to the honeymoon suite. The moment John heard Jerry's voice, he was overwhelmed with excitement. He swung an axe and smashed it against the door lock.
Fiona? No, she's dead. Mal fucking killed her. You okay? I live.
The kind-hearted Jerry lost his life just like that. After dealing with everything, Jack prepared to leave. Only then did he realize that he had forgotten his keys. He hurried back to retrieve them, but John had already taken the keys. At that moment, an alarm suddenly began to sound. Before arriving, Jack had secretly set up a timed ignition device. His plan was to burn down the entire hotel and cover up his crimes. But he never expected to trap himself in the process. Meanwhile, John had already prepared a plan of his own. By the time Jack rushed into the room, John had already taken the lift down to the basement. Yet that familiar feeling of dread soon returned. Clearly, the witch had sensed the arrival of another intruder. John quickly drew another chalk circle on the floor. Before long, the desperate Jack also entered the basement. Unlike John, however, he knew nothing about the witch. When he spotted the key hanging above him, he immediately tried to untie the rope. But the next second, a pair of shackles suddenly appeared around Jack's wrists. The witch walked past John. Although she could not harm anyone inside the circle, a pair of shackles also appeared on John's wrists. At that moment, he could feel his mother's spirit nearby. Perhaps fate had brought him here to seek redemption. When John was a child, he had accidentally shot and killed his mother while playing with a handgun. Now he was finally ready to accept the truth. In the next moment,
I'm sorry. It was an accident.
I know. You can't stay here.
only then did John finally understand why he had been led to this place step by step. His mother knew that he had spent all these years drowning in guilt. She understood that only she could free her son from the burden he carried. This basement was the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the dead. That was why she had come to tell him the truth herself. What happened that day had been nothing more than a tragic accident. Neither she nor his father had ever blamed him. Perhaps that is what the Bog Witch curse is truly trying to tell us. Everyone encounters witch-like hardships in life. The darkness that seems impossible to endure is often what forces us to grow. Fear and guilt are not our enemies. They are the starting point of redemption. John's liberation was not only an apology to his mother, it was also the moment he unlocked the chains around his own heart. In real life, each of us may need to draw our own chalk circle. We must face the deepest shadows within ourselves. Only by acknowledging them and confronting them with courage can we escape our struggles and find the light waiting ahead.